As an online business owner, I know that you are out there balancing all the things. And I know it's even harder if you're in the classroom full time or working another job in some capacity. If that's you, you'll have a lot in common with today's guest, Lindsay Dollinger. Lindsay shares how she's used her podcast to grow her business and how she balances being a podcaster, business owner, and full-time teacher. She shares some really great productivity tips that are completely practical and doable that will help you manage your time as a podcaster alongside all the other roles that you have. Let's get started. Your podcast is a powerful tool that serves your audience and your business. But how do you manage it all, bring in new listeners, and convert those listeners into customers? That's what this show is all about. Welcome to Podcasting for Educators. I'm Sarah Whitaker, classroom teacher turned podcast manager, and I'm here to help you get the most out of your show, all while making an impact on other educators. All right, I am here with Lindsay. Lindsay, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much, Sarah. I am so excited to dive in today.
I'm excited too. We've been following each other on Instagram, and I am having you on today to talk about your experience with podcasting and how you balance everything because you're in the classroom while also being a business owner and a podcaster, which is not easy to do. And there's a lot of people in our audience who are in that scenario. So this will be really great for others to hear about and hear about your experience and just how you manage everything. So before we get into all of that, can you just tell us a little bit about your podcast and why you decided to start one in the first place?
Yeah, so my podcast is the Purpose and Pixie Dust podcast. So I have a lot of fun with it because I add in Disney fun into my branding and not so much my offers anymore. I do have some offers that, have a little Disney branding, but more so my social media, my retreats, stuff like that. So I decided to start the podcast. Well, I really decided to start it probably in 2019, but I actually started it in 2020. Yeah. I actually bought an AppSumo. I don't know if you're familiar with that site, but I bought an AppSumo code for a new up and coming podcast host. And I did that in January 2020. And I'm like, okay, I'm calling my shot. I'm doing it because I had been listening to podcasts probably since 2016. And I was doing that on my drive to work, from home to work back. And that's about a half an hour each way. And I just love learning. I love learning, I'm sure a lot of people on here can relate, especially as teachers. We just love learning all the things. And I was building, like I still am, a business online while in the classroom. And so I kind of found this world of personal development. I found this world of all this free knowledge, but also some fun podcasts too, right? That have nothing to do with business, because why not listen to some of those? And so I realized I loved that so much. Plus, in my business at the time, I was in network marketing and I was a top leader in my network marketing company. And the thing that I really loved about that piece of it, besides helping people in the business piece, was giving trainings. And I realized that I could train all day if they would let me. That's just something that I really wanted to do. And I'm like, okay, but my team doesn't actually need me down their throat all the time doing trainings about all these things. And so I figured podcasting would be a really great outlet for me to get out what I wanted to share with whoever actually wanted to listen to it. And so it started really organically. My show originally actually was called The Social Selling Sisterhood. And I rebranded in 2022 now to the Purpose and Pixie Dust podcast because I was starting to shift out of working just with network marketers to business owners. So I was doing a little bit of a pivot. It just kind of made sense. But yeah, I've had so much fun doing it. I am a little bit shocked that I have been this consistent and stuck with something for this long. I'm like, that's a long time. It is. Paddling back to that. And so it's so funny because when I first started it, the thing I think that held me back from getting started was I really couldn't imagine what I would talk about. I was dead certain that I would, it would be time to record and I would sit down to record because I knew I wanted to be consistent. And so I didn't want to start anything that I wasn't sure that I could keep going long term. And so I'm really glad that I just ripped the Band-Aid off and got started and just started doing it. Did it messy,
Yeah, absolutely. That's what you have to do because we could wait around forever before getting started, but at some point, yeah, you got to rip that Band-Aid off. And it's so funny that you say that. I hear that from so many people. If I start this podcast, how am I going to how am I going to come up with enough things to talk about? And it ends up being the total opposite. Like I know right now for me, I'm getting ready. I'm like getting really ahead in my recordings because I'm going to be going out on maternity leave. And I have so many ideas for solo episodes and guest episodes that I can't even cram it all in. It's crazy how many, like every time you do an episode, it just gives you new ideas for more episodes. So
Absolutely.
definitely ends up not being an issue once you get started. Also, I love the name of your podcast. It's just like a little burst of sunshine. I feel like it's such a fun name. Tell me a little bit more about the type of people that you work with. So you work with kind of like all types of business owners, entrepreneurs?
Yep. So online business owners, I would say about 80% of them are still working their full-time job while also building up their business side hustle and hoping to make it even bigger. And then probably the other 20% are already doing it full time. I have a lot of online tutors that I work with. So, I mean, I'm sure you have realized this as well. We just kind of naturally attract the people who are like us. So I have a lot of teachers, a lot of educators that work with me, which is really fun. And yeah, so I started with a membership and I also had a digital planner and tracker for productivity because that's always kind of been my jam. People are always like, okay, how do you do it all? Like, how do you work and how do you have a business and the podcast and travel and do other things? And I'm like, I'm very productive. I am very efficient. And I really analyze my data and see like what's working and try to, it's like the 80-20 rule. So I try to spend 80% of my time on the stuff that's actually getting me the results in my business. And so those two things came first. And then I added the retreat next. I just really love retreats. I
That's
love
so fun.
the transformation you can do with them. Yeah. And they're just really fun. Like, I feel like it's just like a weekend with your girlfriends. Even if you don't really know the people when you go in, you feel like you definitely know them when you're going out. So I started adding those in. Then COVID happened. So actually COVID happened in the middle of like people were signed up. So we had to like postpone the retreat and it
Oh
still
my
ended up, oh my gosh,
gosh.
it was so stressful.
I'm
And we ended
sure.
up doing it anyway. Everyone's like signing waivers and taking temperature on their way in, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we're all going to get it. Like,
Oh
but
my
it ended up being
gosh.
fine. Yeah. So that was very stressful, but it ended up being great. Then I added my mastermind and some one-on-one coaching as well. So everything's just kind of naturally progressed. I've kind of allowed myself to see what I really enjoy doing, what actually gets people results, and also what I have time for. Because while I'm still working, it's not like I can have 20 one-on-one clients. So I'm like, okay, what can I do to still impact 20 people, like the mastermind or small groups, but not spend 20 hours a week, doing the things one-on-one. So that's kind of how I had to pick my offers.
Yes, I love that. That's such good advice for like any business owner out there. And I love how you've taken, because I would imagine probably from teaching, you've realized what your real strengths are. And I would imagine that's where you found like how you are really great at productivity and managing your time. And that translates into an entire business, which is just so cool to think about. So tell us a little bit about how specifically are you using your podcast as a tool for your business?
Yeah. So a few different ways. At the beginning and still now, I use it definitely as a visibility tool. So I do have guest speakers on that I interview, which actually secretly I really enjoy too, because I'm like asking all the questions that like I want to know, right?
Yes.
To
Yes,
like improve my life and business too. So I'm like, this is a 2-for-1 deal right now.
for sure.
So guest speakers are great because then they're going to hopefully share with their audience and it's just like free exposure and it's just good all the way around.
I love asking people this. Like, I feel like guest episodes are almost easier because it's a conversation versus a
Yeah.
solo episode. I feel like a little bit more planning goes into
Hmm.
it. But do you
Absolutely.
agree? Do you find that as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't prepare anything for my guest episodes. Like I
Yeah.
literally will look over and see, kind of what they do, but I don't plan out questions. I want it just to be a really natural conversation. And I will say out of all the guest interviews I've done, there's only been like one or two that were so awkward that I'm like, okay, I should have prepared some questions. Like I have no idea. Like you're not helping me out here. But the
Yes.
majority of them, have been really, really great. But yeah, I agree because otherwise, for a solo episode, I do actually have to sit down, plan it out, plan out my bullet points. So it's actually something that I am transitioning to do more of this year. I'm like, okay, I'm going to do more solo episodes. Like I'm going to, position myself as that expert more than I have in the past because I do think I have in a certain season fallen on the guest episodes as kind of a crutch. Like, okay, well, I don't need to do any of my own. And then I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, I've done, 10 guests in a row. Like it's time for me to like to shine too and to share what I want to share, right?
100%. Yes. I think it's
Yeah.
so important to have those solo episodes in there.
Yeah. So that's been a little bit tricky too, finding that balance. So visibility and using guests as well to help me with that. I am active on social media as well, and I love repurposing as much as I can. So I stream my videos live when I'm going live with guests. So this is especially with guests. Stream them live, and then I will pull information out of them to create posts, stories. I usually go live in my stories afterwards. I'm like, oh my gosh, just had this great interview. It's coming on, yada. And then I will also repurpose that into a blog post and email content. So I get an email that goes out every week to my followers, like, this is why you need to listen, yada. So I think showing up in all those places as well for visibility has been really, really great. So it's helped me grow my audience because people tell people about it. And then I have a Facebook group that I like to do stuff in as well. So it's just a listener community for my podcast. And then up until probably like 2 weeks ago, I had no official sponsors. I was my sponsor of my podcast. So I would promote my own products and my offerings. And every once in a while, I will mention in there, the episode topic came up because of my mastermind call, and some of my clients are dealing with this. So you might be dealing with this too. And so when you start peppering that into your podcast, people are naturally going to hear it and be like, oh, I'm curious. Like, I have those same issues. And if you're able to help them, how can I work with you? And so little ways like that with topics for sure, but then also using it to promote free webinars, free workshops, my retreat that's coming up. And then after my retreat or after the webinar, I usually do a podcast kind of recap as well. So letting people know, hey, this is what happens. These were the transformations. So it's just me trying to warm my audience up, but also using it definitely as a tool to invite them for the next step to work with me if they think that it would be a good fit.
That is such a good idea. I think that's something that a lot of people miss is having some kind of recap episode after. I mean, for you, it's having that retreat and then coming on and sharing about people's experiences, the transformations that they had. But I feel like even if if you're using your podcast as kind of a runway to your doors opening for your membership or your course, you can do some sort of recap episode after doors close or after a few months or something like that and share about people's transformations and how the membership's going or how the course group is going. I think that that's really, really smart.
And those are usually really easy episodes to come up with too. Because,
Yes.
it's the stuff that you like to talk about. There's so much that you can pour in and share with people. Those ones are actually usually my longer episodes. And then I record them. I'm like, I hope people listen. Like, I hope people are actually great, But it's also good for me too, because then it helps me walk through and analyze things too that maybe I wouldn't have stopped to think about and or give myself some credit for the things that went really well. Because as business owners, we don't always do that either. Take the time to really celebrate in that and enjoy that. So I really enjoy those ones.
Yeah, 100%. And it's good for the listeners too, because usually they're just hearing about like this thing that you're doing, this workshop or retreat or membership. But then if they can get that kind of behind the scenes and see the types of results that people are having, that's going to be great for them to hear as well.
Yeah, they're really good.
Do you ever have on people, like, do you ever interview people from your mastermind or from your retreat come on to the podcast?
I haven't done it for a while.
Yeah.
I normally do them like Instagram lives or in my Facebook group. I have testimonials up on my webpage, but it's actually on my list to do that. I think I am still honestly trying to finesse like how to set the questions up in a way that I'm like, tell me how awesome I am.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
like I think that's the that's the
Yes.
part that at least mindset wise for me, I'm like, okay, what could that even really look like? Because I've heard people do that in a really awesome way
Yeah.
on their own shows. And I'm always like, oh my gosh, this is genius. This is such a good marketing technique. But I am not quite to that level where I have done that yet on my now I have some clients, like I said, a couple years ago who were in my membership and I was doing the membership launch and I spread out and had them on. So that's on my to-do list. to do
Yeah,
again.
absolutely. Yeah, you should totally do that. And I find first of all, that's like such a fear that everybody has with these types of episodes. But I feel like I find that if you can find a really like focal point for the episode, like a specific transformation that the person had or a specific result that they got, and focus on that and them telling their story of that and just like sharing that experience, it naturally comes out that you are a part of that and your program was a part of that.
Okay. That's smart. I'll have to do that. I'll definitely
Yeah.
think about that.
Give it a
Thank
shot.
you.
You're welcome. Okay, so you said you were up until 2 weeks ago, you were your own sponsor. So did you land?
Yes,
Tell us
I
about it.
did.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
I don't know if
Congrats.
this one's, well, I don't know if it's exactly fair because it's my sister, but my sister is a business
Totally
owner.
fair.
Yeah. So
I love
she
it.
has her own, she designs Disney inspired earrings and clothing accessories. And I promote her stuff all the time anyways. And she's like, I should just sponsor your show and give your listeners a special discount code. And I was like, okay. And then she's like, well, invoice me. And I'm like, what? She's like, well, I'm paying you. So it was not something that I pitched. So to be fair, I did
Yeah,
not pitch, it was
that's
maybe a little bit
awesome.
easier than normal, but yeah. So, and it works because, it goes with my theming and my branding. And a lot of people who follow me see her in my content, and the other way around. So yeah, so she is my podcast sponsor for the next 6 months. So I'm putting her stuff in the podcast. I made a little ad to put in, and then have also included it in, some of my social emails and then all the blog posts with the code as well. So I'm hoping as well as I am going along that people are like, oh, she has sponsors, and then that kind of gets the ball rolling on starting those as well. So I'm looking forward to seeing her analytics and hopefully that converts really well for her.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations. And it's totally fine that it's your sister. I mean, the first sponsor is the first sponsor. And like you said, it
Right.
opens that door to future sponsors because you can say, I've had this person sponsor my show before. So good luck
Yeah.
with that. It sounds like it's a perfect
Thank
fit to
you.
go with your brand too.
It is. Yeah, it makes sense. And I'm like, it's nothing competing. It's definitely
Yeah.
something complementary. So yeah, it should be really good.
Awesome. Awesome. So cool. Okay. So now let's talk a little bit about how you balance it all because you've got your podcast, you've got your business, and you are also in the classroom. Are you in the classroom full time?
I am. Yeah.
Okay. So how do you do it all?
Just got home. Very, very careful planning and systems. So I sit down Sunday morning, plan the week out, make sure, to pencil in all the stuff that I have to, personal life, work, clients, workouts. That's a really big one that I usually, put on the back burner, and I can always tell when I'm putting it on the back burner. I am also I have strict boundaries around my sleep because a couple years ago I did not and really got burnt out and just run down and just kind of hated everything, business,
Yeah.
school, all the things. So very, very careful planning, but I also love systems, love automation. So for example, I mentioned I use StreamYard. So I record my podcast on StreamYard. And because of that, I'm able to stream it live onto LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. I'll do Instagram now. I haven't played around with doing that. And I just really have a really clean system. So I stream everything live. Immediately when I get off of the guest interview, I'll click to download it. So I'll download the audio, I'll download the video as well, and immediately put it into Script, do the editing super quick because it's so quick. I love Descript. And I just started using Descript. Before that, I forget what it was called that I used. It was part of it was actually a part of my podcast host did some of that for me, but
Who do you
it
host
wasn't as clean.
with?
Podcast.co. I
Oh, I'm
haven't
not
ever
familiar
heard
with that one.
anyone else that has used them ever, which is so funny because I'm always like podcast.co and I'm like, no, never. I'm always kind of just waiting to get an email that they're going out of business or something.
Yeah. Oh
But
my
no,
gosh.
I use them. They've been great. They have great customer service. So
Awesome.
guys, look into them if you want a new podcast host. Yeah, so I repurpose a ton, like I already mentioned on the show. And then I use Kajabi for my website, email, everything's all in one there. I have funnels set up for freebies. So that is really nice that I have, the email automations that go out for everything. I've created templates for my emails. So my Monday email newsletter kind of style looks pretty similar. I just have to plug and play with it. I have a Trello board that I keep everything organized, all my ideas every month, content ideas, like literally anything you could think of is in that Trello board. So when, for example, you asked for my bio, I just pulled out my Trello board. I have a card in there that says bio and I click copy and paste and I stick it in the email. So it's just little things like that, that instead of like sitting down to think about, like, yeah, you could write your bio in like 3, 4, 5 minutes, but you don't have to if you can just copy and paste and send it over.
It's also
So
mental capacity, like tasks like
yes,
that. It requires you to like really stop and think, and it's so much easier to just have things like that saved. Yes.
yes, yeah, it is safe. And I didn't know how much of a difference it would make. So I tell my clients, because I give them a copy of the template. I give them so many Trello board templates, bless their hearts. But like my business blueprint is the one that I call this. And I'm like, you have to use this. I'm telling you, you have to use this. So that's really helpful. And then, as you were mentioning with your energy, so Tuesdays are my podcast days. So this worked out really well that we're recording on a Tuesday. So I just do one a day. I used to do two or three. Do you know anything about human design? Are you familiar with human design
I'm
by any chance?
actually not very familiar with that.
Okay.
No, but one of the podcasts I listened to had an episode about that, and I haven't listened to it yet, but I have heard about it, and I would love to learn more.
Yeah. So I'm a projector. So basically, projectors are meant to guide and teach, which makes sense based off of the things I enjoy doing. But energy wise, and this every time I hear this, I'm like, but you're meant to work like 2 to 4 hours a day tops. And so projectors are actually make really bad, usually classroom teachers, because we get short with people. I'm like, no more, like, no more, I can't take it. And so I realized if I was teaching and then coming home and then having to be on again for a podcast interview or two or three. And then so I've adjusted that as well with like my one-on-one client. Like my mastermind nights are on Monday nights, and that is the only thing I do for my business on Mondays, because I'm like, I want to give them my entire energy and that's all I can give. So being really self-aware as well has really helped me to figure out and fine tune. So Monday's mastermind, Tuesdays is podcast, everything to do with the podcast. I knock it out. Wednesdays, I do a lot of follow up or just some client work with that. Thursdays, I usually do pitching and outreach. Fridays is also follow up. And then I do content usually on Sunday mornings, sometimes a little bit sprinkled throughout, because I like content. I love creating things. So that doesn't actually seem, like work.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really like my biggest things is repurposing, setting up systems. So anytime I do something more than once, I'm like, okay, I need to record a video and put this on YouTube, and make
Yes.
it unlisted. And that way, when my clients ask me again, I just quickly send them the link and then they can ask me follow-up questions if they want. So really figuring out those things, like you said, to save energy, like your energy leaks, has been really huge for me.
Oh my gosh, yes. I totally agree. All of those little things. Like I was thinking, you said something a minute ago. Oh, how you right after you record, you download the file right then and there. Like that's such a big deal. And like I record my intros for interviews separately, so I always record it right after the interview. Whereas I know a lot of people, like this happens with my clients all the time. They don't record that intro right away, and then what happens is when it comes time for that episode to be ready to air, there's no intro and they forget what they talked about and they don't have the motivation. So just like whatever you can do in that moment when it comes to your podcast, I think it's so beneficial to just get it done right then and there.
Yep.
Curious, because I love that you stream in all of those different places. Do you find that you get people who are watching live when you do those?
LinkedIn, Facebook, usually, yes. Kind of depends on the time, because I usually record anywhere from 4 to 6. So I feel like that's like dinner time, kind of a weird time.
Yeah.
YouTube, I did not see live. So I actually don't stream live on YouTube anymore. When I download that video, I immediately turn around and upload it to YouTube. And then I will usually actually go back when I sit down to do the show notes and finish everything with podcast and edit the description on YouTube. And I found that I get way more YouTube views actually not for a live video.
Okay.
So the live wasn't really helping me. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to take an extra 2 minutes to do the upload instead. Now, LinkedIn, yeah, people do watch live. And actually one of my best clients came from binging me on interviews on YouTube. So I was like, okay, well, we're still doing it. And to my knowledge, I have only had one, but the amount of money that she has brought in, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, this is, why not? Like, I have the content, even if it's not always SEO optimized and yada, yada, it's up there. So I think I want to say like 400 YouTube videos. When I look, I was like, this is just insane.
Wow.
So, but I don't have any crazy number of subscribers or anything like that. It is slowly growing, which is nice. But I'm like, I have the content. Now I just started playing around with putting YouTube covers so that it actually looks nice when people
Yeah.
come to my page
Yeah.
on things, because I don't have any fancy, basically I don't edit them at all. So it's not going to be probably your YouTube videos that are going to be top converting. But I have noticed since I put the covers on, I have gotten some more views on them as well. So I'm slowly going through those as I have time, because it's not a huge priority for me, to make that a little cleaner looking.
Yeah, no, that's so smart. I mean, if you have the ability to use something like StreamYard that like you're recording anyway, so why not go ahead and put
Right.
it on those platforms? So then like for LinkedIn, when you're streaming on there, so then you'll just leave that video up on there as is.
Yep. Yep.
Love it.
So you're able to put like a little description. So since I don't necessarily know how our conversation is going to go ahead of time, I will usually say Purpose and Pixie Dust live guest interview featuring, put the guest, I'll put their little bio that they had to fill out with me. And then I'll say, join us as we talk about. And then I also have in my questionnaire, what are the top topics you want to talk about? And I'll like tweak that a little bit. And so that's the description that goes on the video on Facebook, LinkedIn. And then that's the one I will put up on YouTube until I have time to go in and like tweak it as well. But I don't tweak it on LinkedIn or Facebook after it's already up. I'm like, people can watch it if they want. And then I always stream them to the actual podcast if they want to listen there. But I get quite a few people listening to the video version of it on both those platforms, which to me, it's fine. I'm like, I don't really care if you're consuming it, which way you're consuming it, as long as I'm getting in front of you, you are hearing the things that you need to hear, and hopefully we're still staying connected.
Yeah, for sure. And you're giving people options. You're just kind of like meeting people where they're at, depending on which app they want to be on. So I think that that's amazing. It sounds like you've got such a nice system. I'm so impressed with like how you have been keeping up with everything. And I'm totally with you. You use Trello, I use ClickUp. Regardless of like which platform you choose, I think having a project management tool of some sort is an absolute game changer. I can't imagine running my business without a project management tool.
Hard no.
Hard no. Yes. Okay. Well, other than, and it could be something that you've kind of already touched on, but like I said in the beginning, I definitely have people who are listening who either have already started their podcast and they're still in the classroom, or they still have some sort of full-time job other than their online business. So kind of like two full-time jobs really. Or I know I have people listening who have been wanting to start a podcast, but one of their biggest holdups is time. Like, I'm in the classroom all day. How in the world am I going to add something else to my plate? So if you could just give them maybe like one piece of advice for somebody who is wanting to start a show, but is also in the classroom and worried about time, what would you say to them?
Okay, so I'm going to bunch this all in as one piece of advice.
Perfect. I know it's hard to say just one thing.
I know, just like one thing.
Yeah.
So I would just say chunk it out in baby steps. So sit down and write down a list of everything that you realistically need to do. Like, do you realistically need to spend 2 hours editing it? No, not at all. And honestly, I just started editing my show when I got to script a couple weeks ago. Other than that, I use GarageBand. And so I would literally just like cut out chunks, but there's really not much editing, at least that I know how to do on GarageBand. So don't let the tech, someone told me this in my business a long time ago, don't let the tech hold you back. So figure out what you actually truly need to know. And if you have 15 minutes, you can get a lot done in 15 minutes. Write out your outline for your show and get that done today. And then tomorrow, come up with your graphic for your podcast cover. And so just, break it up into little pieces. It doesn't have to be done all in one day, all in one sitting. I definitely did not do that. And then put a date on your calendar where you're actually going to sit down and record. Just get it done. Just do it. Otherwise, you'll be like me and you buy the thing in January and you don't actually do it until June. And you'll be like, why did I wait 6 months? The best time to start was yesterday. So baby steps and just do what you can.
Yes. Great advice. Baby steps all the way. It doesn't have to, you can either sit in like analysis paralysis for 15 minutes every day, or you can do something, because I totally agree. There's so much you can do in those 15 minutes. So great advice. Thank you so much for sharing just all about how you manage everything and how your podcast is going. Can you tell everybody where they can find you online if they want to connect after listening today?
Yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. This is really fun.
Yeah.
So I'm Lindsay Dollinger, all the places. So
Okay.
you can go to my website, Lindsay Dollinger, and that's with an A. Everyone always spells it with an E, but I'm an A. I'm a Lindsay A. So lindsay.dollinger.com, Lindsay Dollinger on Instagram, and then you can find me over on Facebook as well as YouTube, literally everywhere. I think I'm the only one. If you find another one, let me know, because it's probably an imposter account.
I love it. It's nice when it's the same name across all the platforms. That's how I am too with podcasting for educators. Makes it easy.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, Lindsay, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're so welcome.
Thanks again to Lindsay for joining us today. I love how Lindsay shared really simple things that you can do to make the most of your time and save mental energy while getting all the things done. If you've been considering a podcast, but you're unsure of how you could do it on limited time, I hope that this episode has inspired you to jump in. If it has, you can download my free podcast launch guide to help you get started at podcastingforeducators.com/launch guide. I am always cheering you on as you get started with your podcasting journey, and I'll see you here next week. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. To keep this conversation going, connect with me on Instagram at Podcasting for Educators. I'm always looking for an excuse to talk about podcasting. If you're looking for support in launching, managing, or growing your podcast, check out my online course, the Podcasting for Educators Prep School, at podcastingforeducators.com/prep school. I'll see you here next time.